Welcome. This is our presentation. I'm Paul Gagnon. This is Nabil Zari. And Jan Karlstedt Duke is not with us. He's in Sweden. Overseas. So what we're going to do is do a quick presentation, which is like a dialogue between ourselves discussing the paper, Design, Development, Deployment, and Evaluation of a Fully Digitalized Undergraduate Program.
So I think one of the key aspects, I think, Paul, when we're thinking about the paper is, although we are talking about digitalization as such, is the big shift toward a learner-centric.
Yes.
And that's why we see the role of technology.
So we're shifting the paradigm in effect, right? Nabil, we're saying, here we had a fully controlled narrative by the sage on stage.
Teacher-centric.
Teacher-centric, student-centric. To create, for us, our goal was a mobile, paperless application delivery.
Yeah, I think this calibrates well the notion of fully digitalized. It's not just the content, it's the learning process, it's the delivery, it's also the digital experience is quite present. But that doesn't take away the classroom experience. But this actually, the fully digitalized is not only digitalizing the content.
So that everyone knows, the classroom experience remains here because the offline or on their own time and target is translated into a team-based learning experience face-to-face. And we're not going to spend a lot of time on that. We're going to talk about this process of phases associated with the development of this.
So we discussed the paper. You find much more detail in the papers. We actually wanted to share with the readers the experience of doing this process. And I think this is aimed, Paul, to the people that are about to engage in the digitalization process or in their midway. So we're actually constructing the key aspects into phases.
Correct.
And this is phase one, which is the initiation phase.
And in the paper, we talk a little bit about how we did this. We used a bit of the Delphi technique, right? So the three of us decided that we would get together and look at what are the key factors that we would want to translate. So first thing, strategical plan. What do we mean by that, a strategical plan?
So the initiation, I think what we've discovered is thinking ahead of time and having a strategy how to do this is quite essential, is a key factor to before even engaging into the process of digitalization. Often you have examples of people engaging and then there is a really lack of clarity in terms of for example, one of the key aspects we talked about, the learner-centric is key.
So in our strategical plan, what we did is, before we started, we created cases that reflected the end experience that we intended the students to have. And then we worked backwards from that to ensure that all of the work that we did aligned with achieving that end experience.
So that reminds me a lot of the design thinking approach, the persona, the scenarios.
So we also were aiming towards, this is student-centric. This is to take the load off the faculty, is to put the load onto the students where we think it rests.
And that's this is one of the areas to ensure that this remains learner-centric. Because you can have a fully digitized curriculum that remains
a fully digitalized curriculum.
But still it's very teacher-centric, which is very often what happens with LMS and other things.
And so we don't want that to happen. No. And so this is a structure, digitalization of a medical program, but it also applies to any undergraduate program. For our purposes, we're talking about the medical program. Okay. And the other key factor is to identify resources and integrated support. Again, we need to talk a little bit about that. What do we mean by resources? Well, all of the learning resources, the manpower resources, the administrative resources that would provide that total integrated experience.
And I think with this, we're covering the strategic layer, we're covering the tactical layer, we're also covering the operational layer. So we have all aspects before starting, and those are the key.
So development, when we moved it, so the initiation was like you starting to think about. We have 3 phases.
So 3 phases. This is the second of the.
So first phase,
initiation. Now we're coming into so in this phase, the digitalization is not really in production yet. It's about to be put in place.
This is where we translate what we were thinking about doing into actual experience. So key considerations, leveraging existing technical infrastructure. All of the universities that that we know about have some sort of digital infrastructure.
Yes.
So we want to examine what is it that we can carry forward that existed both in NTU and in Imperial College.
And I think the good thing about this aspect really is not to throw, what we usually say, throw the baby with the bathwater.
Baby out with the bathwater.
Yeah, it's also a combination of, you start to think about sustainability and really leveraging what's good from the IT, and it's kind of, you optimize your resources with the support. So building on an existing infrastructure. Not only that, but it's a quite essential thing during the development.
Key development, content development paradigm. What do we mean by that? It's like how do we begin to create content that is scalable, economical, and builds on your existing experiences for your faculty. In other words, you don't want them to be redoing materials. And so what we did with the content development paradigm was we said, take your existing PowerPoints, narrate them, or do as we are doing right now, which is standing in front of you and speaking to the slides.
And I think that's an important aspect in connection to the fully digitalized. Because unless there's a really proper paradigm, you won't achieve the fully digitalized. You have some courses that are innovative, some are not innovative. So this is actually a key aspect to be able to scale up.
Correct. Delivery mechanisms. What are the things that that we have to pay attention to ensure that the students can access this material at home or in traveling? And so we invite you to look at the paper where we talk more about that. But the delivery mechanism is not just them accessing at home. It's how do they access in the classroom?
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing.
So because remember, we are paperless and we're delivering a paperless experience using technology in our classrooms.
I think that is one of the beauty. I mean, is actually there's a multiple ways of delivery.
Yes.
And it's not just the idea of online versus offline. It's a suite of mobile, the classroom support. I think that is quite very important. I think that's why maybe the technological innovation can happen on top of the existing.
We talked about leveraging existing technical infrastructure, but now we're talking about we had to also develop and meld or integrate ideas that we had for supporting digital mobile experience with the existing technical infrastructure.
Yes, and I think for most people, they will probably shift from some kind of a learning management system-centric view into a service-oriented kind of technical with different tools and that are
and which we talk about in both the paper,
in the paper,
and also the reference section.
You see later on, there's 2 key references on top of this existing paper.
And then we talk about integrated formative assessment. What do we mean by integrated formative assessment? Well, in our instance, all of the tools that we developed support a formative assessment with immediate feedback to the students. The feedback can be when they're at home, or it can be, in our case, in the TBL classrooms, or in the clinics where they are able to be assessed by clinicians and get immediate feedback on their performance. The whole idea about the technology is it's not just a distinct isolated experience. It's an integrated, always getting feedback when you need it.
And I think that's, with this we cover again the basic infrastructure in the developments. We really innovate around how the content is generated, and then we have the multiple delivery. But this is where we really start to leverage the fully digitalized by having feedback, reflection, the learning process.
So that they're understanding where they are and knowing what they need to do if they aren't ready to move to the next phase in their
And usually that's an
mastery.
issue about how much formative assessment can you give. I think that's why technology provides even more opportunities for actually assessment and reflection. That's actually a beauty of
and we talk a little bit more about that as as we get to the end.
Yes.
So the other factors in
so this is the third phase now. We're into now hopefully they've done phase 1 and phase 2, and phase 2 I think will be very much contextual. I mean it will look different
for everybody. It's going to look different because some of our pedagogy, for instance, was team-based learning.
Someone else could have a problem-based learning.
Problem-based.
Some have maybe other forms of active learning.
They could have small small group learning.
So this paper should be appealing to any kind of context. It's not really specific. We use our context to describe this, but actually these findings can be used by any.
They're scalable to other, which we have already done. By the way, we scaled this over into a Renaissance engineering program.
Yes, to other programs.
So it does work that way.
Yes.
So dynamic process and procedures. Maybe we could talk a little bit about what we meant by that and how we experienced that. The dynamic process and procedures were that we were always able to iterate around what we were doing, not only with the technology, but also with our interactions with the students and our interactions with the applications that we were.
And here you are to a very important point. When people look at this kind of projects, once it's in production, the idea is that that's it, we're done. But actually, that's not the case. Once you're into production, it's a never-ending story of improvements, of quality improvement, of improvement of the technology, because of the nature of technology, it keeps changing.
And one of the things that we'd use associate to support us in this dynamic process and procedures is feedback from the students on a regular basis.
And in the paper, we have a specific section about the satisfaction. We've looked at continuously acquired feedback from actually, and we report you remember Paul, in the results section, a specific one from the learner perspective.
So we have a longitudinal, we have a longitudinal survey for 5 years of each cohort. So we can see what the 2013 cohort were saying, what the 2016 cohort are saying, and we can get a better picture as to the efficacy of our processes and procedures, and we can tune those as we go along. And this brings us, like, we have continuous integrated formative assessment. You have to plan for that. But we also created a learning analytics, and that's an important feature because it's that learning analytics that gives us a sense of what is working and what necessarily we need to change.
I think that's the beauty of, if you have a fully digitized curriculum, the amount of data you collect from the learner, it has to be leveraged. And that's the first step of really, truly comprehensive learning analytics. And I think in the paper you see examples of how that's being used in the classroom experience, but that's really when you have enough data, richness of the data is quite interesting.
And we really want to build on this learning analytics because that allows us to dive deep. If our content isn't working, we don't know. But there's so much content. We need to be able to go and find a way to understand how are the students interacting, not just their feedback on the survey, but the actual time they're spending on the content.
The actual behavior.
And behavior.
We report in the paper the student, I think the beauty of it is longitudinal, to see as we make changes how people respond, and it was hard. But the second is the actual use of this is actually even more interesting because you see how and that actually could be, in learning analytics normally you want to either improve the learning process, but here we have this, but also the faculty is able to have a much more understanding at the student, at the learner level. The third is the continuous quality improvements. Because when you have a fully digitalized, you imagine the challenge is, how do you manage this fully digitalized curriculum? And I think this is one of the key elements, key factors in
because one of the things that's important is that we're continually refining our assessments, for instance, and we're also continually looking at the content, because the content will quickly become dated, or you'll be able to get a sense of what content the students are enjoying and what content is causing challenges and what content is just being, what do we say, rubbished, for lack of a better word. Finally, the sharing ethos.
What do you mean by that?
Yes, interesting. The sharing ethos. So that we're all on board, like all of us, we're interested in not only just making this happen, but continually dialoguing around, hey, this is what we're doing. Is it working? So the people who were using the system, our ecosystem, were feeding back on a continuous basis. Because of their experience in front of the classroom, they could come back and say, hey, this needs to be changed. This supported an iterative process.
So if I want to summarize again.
Summarize again, yes.
it's really once you move into production, I think there is something different in a fully digital curriculum. One is the dynamic process of it's never ending. It's improving, and I think once you're at this stage, it's a joy because you keep updating your environment. The second one is really the assessment loop. The third one is we're starting to have a possibility to have a data-driven insights. The third one is culture, right? The culture. So in a fully digitized curriculum, there's a culture that happens. There's something happens with the environment that is quite interesting in terms of how people are involved. The co-ownership of the environment is different as opposed to some kind of we and them. I mean, a curriculum, a program delivering to learners. Learners are very much involved in the shaping and I think that's usually have a positive influx in terms of how people feel.
And one of the things that we do, Nabil, I think we want to point out to you is that we elaborate what are the key factors associated with the dynamic process and procedures. We specify those in the paper, so it's worthwhile having a look and seeing, because we've itemized those for you. We don't have time to go through all of that right now. But
so I think we
that's what we wanted to do. We wanted to bring you to a bit of a soak your toes in the water or put your feet in the water. This flipped classroom chapter walks through the ecosystem and its development. So we
I think
encourage you to have a look at that. It's in
the reference list. I think this is a must-read. We really comprehensively, because there's always limitation with papers. This is a much more comprehensive chapter where we can go back and look at the tools, the kind of I think this is a must-read if you are going to engage into this effort in the future. And it's a reference list. It's a book.
It's a book. It's a
full chapter.
And it's a full chapter in the book. And finally, acknowledgements. This is nothing happens without a team. And we're fortunate to have a very substantively engaged group, and we called ourselves Team Elite. E-learning and IT, information technology. So
I think this is
so that's the
very important picture to show you that this is a group effort. This is a group effort of different kind of people. This is not a one-man show, and I think it's
all about that. It's all about the sharing and the vision of that we had, which was to transform the learning experience and translate it to a student-centric experience. And with that, this is some contact information.
Please do contact Paul.
Contact myself. I can give you the references to the contact list. We hope that we've given you a bit of a feel for the paper and also the process for moving to a fully digitalized undergraduate program.
And I think this is welcoming of having actually a dialogue. So once you've read the paper, which we hope you do, we would really like to engage into a dialogue with you, and happy to answer any questions, happy to understand your context. And primary contact is Paul, and Paul is us. So it's good to. I think this is a invitation to a dialogue. So we
look forward to sustaining that, or continuing that, or initiating that.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much,
and enjoy the paper.